We live in a time where the price of consoles and video games are starting to become almost a luxury, where they're becoming more and more unaffordable for the average consumer. If you haven't upgraded to the latest and greatest console of this generation, it's hard to say now's a great time to do so. And Sony hitting us with a price hike on a 6-year-old system just gave us the biggest reason not to. And that includes me. In fact, I've been playing my PS4 more than ever before. So if you haven't upgraded or you're just now thinking about jumping into the world of PlayStation and this scares you, it's okay because there's no better place to start than with the PlayStation 4. Sure, the PS5 is better in virtually every way. Better graphics, better performance, faster load times, all of that. But that's not the full story because when you actually sit down to play, the PlayStation 4 is still an amazingly capable machine. And with two fairly minor upgrades that we'll get to, the PlayStation 4 can be even better than it already is. It has one of the greatest libraries of all time, one I've barely scratched the surface of. One of the reasons I've been playing it so much lately is I'm doing a playthrough of the God of War series, and for the PS4, that starts with God of War 3. Yes, it's a PS3 game, but like so many PS3 games, it got a remaster for PS4 where it looks amazing and plays great. And there are plenty of others that got that same treatment. The Last of Us Part 1, the Arkham games, BioShock, Tomb Raider, Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6, and even Resident Evil 4 Remake came out on the PS4, which I actually didn't even realize. I do wonder how it plays. Those aren't just games that are good for the time they released, they're still some of the best games you can play today. And on PS4, they look even better. And the best part, most of those games are cheap, like really cheap. And the same goes for PS4 games, Ghost of Tsushima, Bloodborne, God of War, and even its sequel, Ragnarok, because gone are the days where you cut off an entire install base to try to convince them to buy your latest generation. No, now we have consoles living and being supported longer and longer, which is honestly great for us. Developers still continue to make great games for this years later. In fact, it's only now that we're seeing new releases finally stop. But that still leaves us with games like Marvel's Rivals, Elden Ring, Horizon Forbidden West, the recent Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection, which can run on a phone, I'm sure, but it's still nice to have it available. Same for Call of Duty Black Ops 7, so if you're into competitive shooters, you're still covered, kind of. Though if you're really into it, the PS4 is probably not the best way to play it. Still an option, but so is Fortnite. Basically everything recent that's not super demanding has also released on the PS4. So if you haven't played your PS4 in a while or you've never bought one, there are a ton of great games available right now on this machine. And once you power it on and you dive in, you don't really care about all the specs you're missing out on. I'm sure some of you do. Some people really agonize over the thought of games running at 30 frames per second when they can run better. Games being 1080p instead of 4K, or in the case of some of the newer ones, they might even get as low as 720p. But I've never been one to put that much stock into graphics. I like Nintendo hardware after all. It would be kind of silly for me to care about top of the line specs. Loading times are a different story. As a Nintendo fan, I love the cartridges because they just loaded up so fast back in the day. When I first bought a PS2 and experienced the pain of loading, I'm looking at you, Vice City, I absolutely hated it, but over time got used to it because games just kept getting bigger and bigger and loading times just kept getting longer and longer. That is until SSDs came along and they really cut the loading times down. Now that is something you don't get with the PS4 that you get with the PS5. Obviously it also helps that the CPU is that much more powerful and there's more RAM to hold everything, but a lot of the speed comes from the SSD. Luckily, the PS4 comes from a company that doesn't mind you doing a little self-upgrading on the hard drive. That means it's a simple plug and play to upgrade to not only more storage, but faster storage, something Xbox just never liked you doing. So if you really want to reduce those load times and get closer to what you might expect on the PS5, you can in fact upgrade this to an SSD. And while that would have been an easy no-brainer like 6 months ago, unfortunately, it's not such a no-brainer now. Like the PS5, SSD prices have also skyrocketed recently, and a 1TB SSD you could have bought for maybe like $50 or $75 a few months ago is now $150. So it's hard to recommend spending $150 just to reduce your load times. And part of that is because I find I don't really need it, at least for the way I play, which is mostly one game at a time. And I like to leave my PS4 in standby mode, so with the press of a button, it's right there, all loaded up, ready to go right back into the action. In game, yeah, there's still loading that happens, but is it really worth spending $150 right now to reduce it? Well, that all depends on how much you value your time. But it is an amazing option to have. Another issue with recommending an SSD is that the PS4, the original, and the Slim are both limited to SATA 2 speeds, which top out at 3 gigabytes per second. It's only the PS4 Pro that can read at up to 6 gigabytes. So while an SSD in the original and Slim will still have a speed boost over a disk drive, it's not going to be as fast as what the Pro could do, or obviously the PS5. But even without upgrading the hard drive, you still have one of the best values in gaming right now. Assuming you don't already have one, you can buy a PS4 for like $100, and the Pros go for only $150. So if you really want the boost in speed, graphics, frame rate, that's not a bad price for the upgrade. In fact, it's one I decided to make while making this video. I managed to snag a PS4 Pro off eBay for $140 total. That's not bad in my opinion. I think I'd rather have the better graphics more than the faster load times. Maybe I'll update the SSD if those prices ever come down. It hasn't arrived yet, but I'm kind of excited to rock this for a while and really interested to see how Ragnarok looks on this compared to how God of War looked on my Slim. Then I'll probably tell real quick if this impulse buy was worth it or if I just threw away $140. I'd make a video about it, but it feels like that's about 10 years late, but feel free to let me know down in the comments if that's something you'd be interested in. Okay, hold on. Future Justin here, and yeah, I completely forgot to talk about one of the aspects of the PS4 I absolutely love, and that is remote play. Not so much remote play on the Vita. I have tried it, it's fine, but I don't like the controls because, well, the Vita doesn't have R2L2 or R3L3, so to trigger those, you have to either touch the top and bottom of the back touchpad or the screen. Having it be the rear touchpad isn't too bad, but I do not like it on the front. You have to take your fingers off the controls to trigger it, and it's just really bad. Worst part is you can't remap them for some reason. It's set by the developer of the game, and you're just kind of stuck with it. God of War is basically unplayable because you just can't do attacks or aim properly without having your fingers all over the screen, and it's just not very responsive. But remote play on something else is really good and has really helped me power through some games. It's great on the laptop, works well with the DualShock 4 plugged in, and it's really good on my Iron Thor. That at least has 2 shoulder buttons and sticks that click, so you have all the controls you need, and if you use a third-party app, it works great because for some reason the official PlayStation app doesn't recognize built-in controls, making the Thor basically useless. Sometimes it feels like companies really just do the bare minimum so they can say, hey, here you go, you have what you asked for, now leave us alone and go buy our hardware. And yes, I know the PS5 has remote play, and it even has the PlayStation Portal, which can play PS5 games, even if you don't have a PS5, but then you have to have a PlayStation Plus membership, and yeah, I'm not paying Sony $250 just so I can have the privilege of paying Sony $16 a month to rent games, but that's just me. Alright, well, back to me. Whether it's the regular PS4 or the Pro, you couple that with the massive library and you're getting one of the best consoles ever made with minimal investment. And as tends to happen with all consoles, old or new, there's always the option of jailbreaking it. Now, some might scoff at that idea, and I get it, but jailbreaking can often breathe new life into old consoles, and that's exactly what it can do for the PS4. And if you do that, well, you sort of open this up even more. I didn't do that to my PS4 Slim because, well, my PS4 is updated to the latest firmware and there isn't an exploit for it yet. and there's like no real easy way to downgrade the firmware. But then I remember that I have this original PS4 just lying around, and no, I don't just buy a whole bunch of consoles and forget about them. This is a console I bought cheap because it was overheating and I fixed it in a video for a repair channel I used to do. I meant to sell it, but the power button was broken and I never bought a new one, and so I just never sold it. But I figured it's been sitting unused for like 2 years now. There's a good chance it doesn't have the latest firmware. Let's see. Well, first it needs a hard drive. That might also be why I never sold it. So let's take one out of this Xbox One X I ripped a ton of traces on. I never said I was good at it. We can take it out of this little cage, erase it, and then reformat it. Next, we just need to slide it in here and then look for the best update we can find, which the console says it has to be at least version 12.00. So let's update this to the version 12.02. Put this update file on a USB drive and plug it into the PS4, and away it goes. Now we have a working PS4 that's on firmware version 12.02 and is ready for a little jailbreaking. Unfortunately, this version requires you to use a Blu-ray disc with a file on it to open the exploit, and that's something I'll have to get to a little later on because I don't have any blank Blu-ray discs. But if your PS4 is running an older firmware version, one that can be exploited, it can provide some nice benefits. You can install homebrew apps that includes RetroArch, so you can emulate some older games. I think it tops out around PS1, N64, but that's still pretty cool. You can also play decent amount of PS2 games on here. Unfortunately, not PS3 because the PS3 is still so hard to emulate. Besides opening this up to more games, it can also help improve games by using updates that can allow games to run at higher frame rates, going up to 60 FPS when the developers lock them at 30. Now, that's not going to be for every game, but it is for games like Ghost of Tsushima, Uncharted, Witcher 3, and let's be honest, it's always great to get an update that improves gameplay, especially a free one, so big thanks to the modding community for all they do to improve our experiences. No, you can't play online using a modded console, and you don't even want to log into your PSN account with one because you'll get banned, but you can still get online. You can watch Netflix if you still have Netflix. You can download games. You can load up custom themes. All the great things modded consoles can do. And yes, you can be a pirate if that's your thing. For me, I like the collecting, and my PS4 collection's a little thin, and some of them are in these like stupid GameStop like cases. So I'm going to keep buying games I want to play. At least they're not $70 anymore. And that's what makes this one of the best deals in gaming, but that is highly dependent on your usage case. If you have your eye on the latest games releasing and you want to play them the best way possible, you're better off saving for a PS5. But if you're on a tighter budget, you missed out on the PlayStation last generation, or you just haven't powered yours on in a while, this can still provide tons of entertainment value. And with everything around us going up in price, it's nice to see some great things are still reasonably priced. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, and if you like the vibe, why not subscribe? We'll catch you in the next one.